What is going on, all you Pokemon collective maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and I am so excited to do this video today. So we did this exact same view for Sword and Shield about a week ago, and you guys said in the comments down below that you really enjoyed it, so I've been kind of scrambling and pushing to get the Sun and Moon version out, and I'm telling you right now, the Sword and Shield one was a little bit crazy. We're dealing with in-stocks, we're dealing with out-of-stocks. The market is going absolutely frothy right now in the Sword and Shield space, so it's very, very hard to come up with accurate forecast because there's all kinds of things outside of the control of the math or outside of the control of any of us that are going down, and that's affecting prices. But what gets me so excited about Sun and Moon is that, hey, these things have been out of stock forever. We're not worried about in stocks. We're not worried about out of stocks. This is how these booster boxes have been moving, really only due to the effect of the overall Pokemon market. So watching them move over time, it's cool and it's interesting and it's fun to see how they've moved in the past. But for me, I'm trying to take those past movements to give me some lessons so that I can possibly apply it to some of the future prices that we're going to see once all of Sword and Shield is sold out, just like these Sun and Moon booster boxes are. So how do I do all of this? As I said, I've been warehousing this information. I have it all in Excel. I hit this handy dandy forecast sheet in my Excel workbook, and it spits out something like this. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail because I did it for the Sun and Moon video, so if you didn't watch it, go back and watch it. But what this gives you is this, a blue line. That blue line represents the actual prices, the actual end of month prices for the booster boxes up until this point. So this is Cosmic Eclipse right here. Then it gives you three little lines there at the end. I call it the trident of truth, right? The yellow line up top is the high projection, the high forecast number. The gray line down there is the low projection, the low forecast number. There's a yellow line in the middle, and that is the actual forecast. That's the math saying, okay, they're planting its flag in the sand and saying, this is the actual price we think this is going to be at 3 months from now, because that's the view. We do this every quarter. So this is projected out 3 months, right? And then I also add in a green trend line because, listen, prices aren't linear. They go up, they go down, they jostle, they do all kinds of crazy things. But when you add a trend line in there, it is a very powerful visual to see over time how these products have moved. And again, I use this to take lessons from the past, to apply them to the present, to give me some idea of what might happen in the future. And there's no more powerful thing than looking at this to kind of display the power of sealed and display the power of, hey, things will go up and things will go down. But in the long run, when you look at these trend lines, it is a very, very strong case for sealed product in the Pokemon space. Now, I will say this, data is blind, right? It's just black and white. It doesn't take any kind of macroeconomic factors into it. So there are all kinds of things that can upset the apple cart. But I will say this, we have done this 4 different times. This is the 5th time. There's 12 entries every time, 12 booster box sets. So 4 times 12 is 48. We have 48 data points. 98% of the time, the forecast and the actual price ends up above the lower confidence bound. So 98% of the time, the price ends up above the lower confidence bound, right? So at least we know we have a very, very solid bottom baked in, but that's what we would expect. This is sealed product. Sealed product doesn't typically go down in the Pokemon space, and at least especially in these Sun and Moon boxes, if it does go down, it doesn't tend to stay down. So that is kind of like a, well, that's what we expect thing. But the interesting thing to me is up until this point, 88% of the time, the actual booster box price at the end of 3 months beat forecast. So almost every time the actual price was above forecast. But guess what? This go around, it brought it down. I think we had 4 sets that ended up missing forecast and 8 that did hit forecast, which might not sound like a big deal. You're like, hey, 8 still hit, but 4 missing is a big deal when we have had such a strong track record of beating forecast. And I have a lot of thoughts as to the why. I think a lot of people aren't spending $600, $700, $800 on a Sun and Moon booster box right now when they could be putting that money into Sword and Shield booster boxes, which have the opportunity to have some huge price growth in front of them. So I think the velocity of sales here in the Sun and Moon space has slowed down, but I also think that a lot of people are focusing on some other things. Now, with all of that being said, before we get into the actual meat and potatoes and go set by set, if this gets you excited, if you're pumped to see these charts, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, and questions or comments, drop them down below. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. And here is Cosmic Eclipse, and guess what? We are starting right off the bat with one of the hottest sets in the Sun and Moon era. It's got all kinds of chase cards in it, and it missed forecast from the last quarter. Why is that? Well, it's because it was taken off like a scalded rabbit, and then if you look at the last couple months, it is actually down just a tick. Now, it is flat to down, but overall, it is down a couple dollars. Another big takeaway for me from the Cosmic Eclipse was look at how flat it was really for almost all of 2022. And we saw that exact same price movement with Fusion Strike. When we did this video for Fusion Strike, we looked at it, and really Fusion Strike was flat, sub $100 for almost all of 2022 before it started to really get exciting, before it really started to get hot. And we see that exact same trend here in Cosmic Eclipse. Now, from April of 23 to November of 23, this thing just absolutely ran up. But as I said, it has been flat ever since. Now, it's a wildly popular set. It has huge chase cards in it. So I have no doubt about the future value and the future price appreciation of Cosmic Eclipse. But when you got a booster box that's almost $900, that's a lot of money for a booster box, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how long it remains flat, when it gets hot again. And that is one of the reasons I love doing this video series, because it's just super cool to watch the trends. Now, the next one right here, back-to-back ones that missed forecast, because look at the blue line all the way to the right. Another set that was incredibly hot here from, you know, really the kind of the end of 2023, and then it saw a dip. So again, the math was taking that hot trend to end 2023. It thought that the trend was going to continue. It didn't. It actually dipped. But what we're starting to see is, if you look again on the blue line on the right, it's starting to work its way back up, right? So we have a forecast over the next 3 months of positive 8.7%. The other thing that was interesting to me was how this set really just slowly, gradually climbed from January of 2022 all the way to June of 2023. So these sets that we've seen here have been, again, I am trying to learn from Sun and Moon what I can apply to the Sword and Shield era. So watching some of these sets, and I know we're only 2 sets in, but the trend's going to continue. See a period of flatness in that $300-400 range, and then all of a sudden it goes up. I know a lot of us will think that we've missed the boat on some of these Sun and Moon or Sword and Shield booster boxes, but if they perform anything like Sun and Moon, that means even in the $300-400 range, a lot of these sets are still going to have some upside. So that's a really, really interesting thing to take away, and something we should keep top of mind as we're looking at how these booster boxes have performed over the last 27 months. Now, getting into the next set right here, listen, Unified Minds, Unbroken Bonds, those are my 2 favorite from the Sun and Moon era. I have been saying that all along. But listen, this one started a little bit higher than Unified Minds did. So it looks like it was flat, and it really was flat for much of, you know, really 2022 all the way to July of 2023. And then we saw it spike a little bit, but not as aggressively as we've seen in other sets so far. We've seen this is kind of a gradual uptick right here, and then it starts to flatten out. Now the math, because it was so flat a lot of last year, or at least in 2022, and because it's been flat the last couple months, the forecast is flat, right? The current price is $620. The math is forecasting out $619. So actually projecting just $1 down, but we'll have to see. And again, I don't think that's a bad projection. I think a lot of people are going to be focused on other things. I think share of wallet is a big concern right now. So I would not be surprised if this remains flat. Again, I don't think that's a bad thing for the long-term price prospects of this. I just think it's the current market that we're in right now. Getting into Team Up. Team Up. The beast from the east, the biggest and the baddest of the Sun and Moon era. Listen, from February of 2023 until November of 2023, this thing took off like an absolute rocket ship to the moon. It has been crazy to watch Team Up all the way go from, you know, in the $900 mark all the way up to the $2,000 mark where it is today. And the math still really loves Team Up. It's still forecasting another plus 8.7% over the next quarter. Again, I just don't see, I don't know, who knows? It's interesting. To me, it's fascinating. As a pure investor, I don't know if I would spend $2,000 on a Team Up booster box, knowing that if I want to make 50% on my money, Team Up booster box has to get to $3,000. Or if I would take $2,000 and I would spread that into sets like Lost Origins, sets like Brilliant Stars, which I think as soon as they flip to sold out, there's going to be some significant upside in it. I think Team Up getting to $3,000 has a much harder climb than, say, a Lost Origin booster box you can buy for $150, right? Eventually getting to $225. I think that is where you're going to see a bigger rate of return, at least in the immediate future. But still, the other thing that was interesting to me is I always think about Evolving Skies, and I always draw a comparison between Team Up and Evolving Skies. Even though Evolving Skies wasn't as short printed as Team Up was, from Team Up's perspective, look how it slowly climbed from $700 all the way to $900 in 2022. Yes, it was climbing. Yes, it went up $200 over the course of a year. But compared to those huge price gains that we saw from February 23 to November 23, that was kind of muted. And where's Evolving Skies booster boxes right now? They're right on the door of $700. And I'm not saying that they're going to slowly creep up to $900. And I'm not saying it's eventually going to be a $2,000 booster box. I don't know what the future holds, but it is interesting to see these two patterns from the two big sets. And I'll be keeping a close eye on it as we continue to go through this. Now, Lost Thunder right here. The math doesn't love Lost Thunder very much. It actually thinks that Lost Thunder is going to go down just a little bit, but the upper confidence bound is way up there too, all the way up at $796. And that's because if you look at this same time frame from last year in the 2023 range, you see that there was this huge price spike. Now, I don't think we're going to see that in Lost Thunder. I will tell you from right now, from my perspective, Lost Thunder is a great set. It's obviously anchored by that Rainbow Lugia card, but outside of that, not my favorite set in terms of card lineup. So I think this is a conservative forecast. Again, I don't think it's going to go down, but I certainly don't see a lot of big gains out of Lost Thunder in the foreseeable future. So really interesting to see this price graph, and really interesting to see how it's almost exactly on trend line. That was another big takeaway for me when I was looking at this. Getting into Celestial Storm, We talked about a lot of these sets were flat and then they saw crazy growth. We have seen that time and time again. Celestial Storm has done, I talked about things not being linear. It doesn't get any more linear than this. Celestial Storm has just been that little engine that has been chugging its way all the way up from $400 in January of 2022 up to $712 today. I don't know if it's going to slow down. I don't know if there's an end in sight. Again, slow and steady growth is usually pretty healthy. So it's just fascinating to me to see how this set, for me, I know there's a big, trainer chase card in there. I get it. But outside of that, this set, it really has a lot of, I don't know, it just doesn't have a lot of oomph to me. So it doesn't matter what I think. All that matters is what the market thinks. And this thing certainly has been just a sight to behold, watching it slowly climb month over month. The math really loves it. Think it's going to go up another 9.1%, and just conceptualize that 9.1% in 3 months on $712 is a huge gain. So I don't know if it can keep it up, but if it stays on trend, it sure has a shot. It's been fun watching Celestial Storm run and run and run. Now, the next one here is for Forbidden Light. The math does not like Forbidden Light, right? Look at that green trend line right there, and look how last year it went through this big dip. It had this big bowl where it came down, it stayed flat. It finally started working its way up, but the math is saying, hey, listen, don't fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, right? So it is going to make sure that it is not going to be fooled again. And I don't know, what was my big takeaway from this Forbidden Light graph was, yes, it came down, but that should have been a buying opportunity. We should have said to ourselves, hey, listen, sealed product, whenever it drops, it just doesn't stay down. Sealed product is a great long-term investment. So if we had the opportunity and the wherewithal and the foresight to see, hey, listen, Forbidden Light booster boxes are down $20, $30, $50 at this point. We should have understood that it's going to come back up, and you could have made a decent amount of money in a short amount of time. So this is, again, a future lesson for me. Now, the forecast has it at negative 9.4%. Again, that's not going to happen. I have no concerns in the world about this dropping back down. But if you look at that blue line, it is starting to flatten out again. So we could see some price movement. We could see it stay flat. I don't think we're going to see a huge jump here. Again, just another set that I don't know if I would prioritize over some of the other awesomeness that's going on out there. Getting into Ultra Prism right here, another set that just had this slow, steady eddy growth. You know, in October of 2023, we did see a little bit of a pop, but then it flattened right out again. What was interesting to me was Ultra Prism, out of all the forecasts that we looked at, this actually has the third highest forecast at 7.1%, which is interesting to me. Another set, I get it. It's awesome. I get it. It's Sun and Moon. I get it's from an era far beyond that people have absolutely tons of love for, but it just doesn't strike me as the set that's going to be a $700 booster box, or at least the set that I want to spend $700 on a booster box for. Maybe if I get stupid rich someday and I just say, hey, I want to have one booster box from every single set from the Sun and Moon era, then I'd go after it. But the prices are just insane for a lot of these. So it will be interesting to see what happens over the next 3 months. And I really can't wait to do a look back video 3 months from now and see where all of these prices have ended up at. Now, the next one we're talking about is Crimson Invasion. Now, it's had ups and downs, but this thing has been right on trend line again. Another graph where I love looking at that green trend line, and you see the blue line above it, then you see it arc below it, then you see a cup above it, and now it is really, really right on it. So there's not a lot of love in the forecast, only up 4% over the next couple months. But hey, when I went back and looked at this, I said, listen, over the last 27 months, this booster box has gone up $55. So even though the trend line doesn't look that great, even though this is a $212 booster box compared to all the other ones that we've been looking at, $600 booster boxes, $700 booster boxes, Cosmic Eclipse at $800, guess what? That is a 35% gain over the last 25 months. There are a lot of Wall Street investors out there who would absolutely go Looney Tunes for a 35% gain over the last 27 months. So even though Crimson Invasion was not the best set of them all, it still gave us a pretty great return over the last 27 months that none of us should shake a fist at. This thing started in January of 2022 at $157 a booster box, and now it's all the way up to $212 a booster box. So again, just something to keep in mind. It's still too early to get all excited about some of these Sword and Shield, but I mean, when I think about sets like Battle Styles, right, that are still $110 a booster box, you got Vivid Voltage, which is at $130 a booster box. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we still need to wait for the rest of the Sun and Moon products to sell out before those prices start to become, you know, super approachable. But again, I keep that in the back of my mind. These are the lessons that I'm always trying to learn. Now, getting into the next one right here, Burning Shadows missed forecast, and Burning Shadows just has not grown a lot. Now, 16% over the last 27 months isn't a huge gain, right? In the stock market, at least, you try to average about 8 to 10% per year in growth. That is what, the average is out there. The average is 8%, but 10% means that you're beating average, which we all try to do. And this is the worst performing one from Sun and Moon. I went ahead and I looked at all the price changes over the last 27 months, and Burning Shadows performed quote unquote the worst, although going up 16% just isn't that bad. And again, I wanted to call that out, even though it's below forecast, even though the current forecast is only 1.2%, even though this is considered the worst one, you still would have gained 16% over 27 months. It just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy when I'm thinking about the downside protection that you have in sealed investing. I always say this, I would much rather protect the downside than aggressively go after the upside. And when I see stuff like this, it lets me know that even if I make a terrible decision in the sealed space, I still have a whole lot of protection. Even Burning Shadows went up 16% over the last 27 months. So the next one right here is Guardian Rising. The forecast loves this a little bit more, almost up 5% over the next 3 months. But guess what? It really has followed the trend. It has been following that trend line all the way up and to the right. And listen, as I said before, $400 for Guardian Rising booster boxes right now. I'm not knocking Guardian Rising, like I totally get it, but I just think that there's a lot of other things that we could spending our money on right now. So I don't foresee this doing a lot of price growth. I think other people are looking at other things. Let's not forget about One Piece and Lorcana, right? That is a big share of wallet factor too. But it is interesting to see that at least this set hasn't seen those crazy price spikes and those big drops. This thing has been steady Eddie up and to the right, and it'll be interesting to see if it hits that $432 forecast here in the next couple months. Now, finishing it off, and we're finishing it off with a Wamp Sun and Moon. It finished below forecast. Look how flat Sun and Moon booster boxes have been really for the last 6 months. Now, it was aggressive in growth all the way from January of 2022, all the way to the middle of 2023. It saw some great price action. It was growing. I think I was one who was pretty excited about it. I actually don't hate the lineup from Sun and Moon. I think for a base set, it's got some pretty strong cards in it, but then it just flatlined, right? It's a base set. Yes, the cards are okay compared to other base sets, but compared to the rest of the lineup in the Sun and Moon era, it still is a far cry from the best. So it will be interesting to see where this ends up at. Again, it has been flat for the last 6 months. The forecast loves it because it saw some price appreciation last year at the same time, but I project it's going to be flat. So hey, we'll just have to wait and see and figure out where it all ends up. But listen, I have so much fun putting this information together. Again, it's not just about what will happen. For me, it's about learning what has happened. And as we continue to see Sword and Shield products get sold out, as we get further and further into Scarlet and Violet, I think these types of lessons, these types of learnings are going to be incredibly impactful for all of us and help us play chess when everybody else is playing checkers. So if you made it to the end and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit the subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. I appreciate you more than I can say. You have an epic one. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.